We're joined by Robert Aspel, you're president of Cargill China. Cargill's been involved in China for a few decades now. How do you see your operations developing there?
Basically, Cargill's been involved there for about 4 decades. So our relationship started as a trading relationship with China, which is mostly around imports of wheat. China would need to import higher quality wheats every now and then, so that's how we started. And as China joined the global community and started opening up to foreign investment, we, I guess over the last 15 years or so, we've started investing in China. And now today I've become a full-fledged partner, fully invested in China with several business units on the ground.
And when you say invested in China, it's something like $1 billion that you've put in there.
Yeah, just under $1 billion, and it's also it's investing in assets, but also investing in bringing our best practices around food safety, risk management, and obviously a significant component of that is investing in talent.
Food safety is a major issue. How are you handling that?
Food safety for Cargill has been at our core for as long as I've been with the company, and for a very, very long time at Cargill. And suddenly we found all these problems in China over the last several years. We found that our skills were really needed. So what we're doing in terms of food safety, we understand that we have a leading role to play. So we're cooperating with China on many fronts in terms of food safety. Obviously, all of our own practices, our plants, processes, from the day one, we've brought the best that we have from around the world. We also fund programs bringing Chinese, American, and European institutions together, so people can learn from each other and improve collaboration around food safety. We also work very closely with customers, try to raise the awareness and help them in following the processes, in putting better processes around food safety.
But is it mainly keeping tight control over the supply chain?
It's about that, and it's about the checks in the supply chain. So, and we have to take it seriously. We have people dedicated basically full-time to food safety. It costs money, and this is certainly something, if you looked at it a decade ago, it was difficult for us for some of our businesses because that puts costs in the system, and in China not necessarily everyone would have the same principles. But the gap is closing very quickly. Chinese companies have learned now that they have to have the highest of standards. So we're getting to a more level playing field now in terms of food safety.
You bring the soybeans in from Argentina, you refine them in China for the Chinese market, but you're also going the other way, exporting from China to Japan,
Yes.
the US, Europe.
Yes. By far and large, for when we look at the oilseeds industry and oilseeds and vegetable oil industry, by far and large, China is an importer, and because of the success of the Chinese economy, the growth in GDP per capita, and also the wealth of the Chinese coming out, and forming a big middle class, diets changing. So there's a significant pull from China for vegetable protein and healthier oils and fats. So that part of the industry is clearly for us a model where we have global supply chains working in China and working to connect China to the rest of the world, and we believe this is going to continue to be a significant pull from China, from the Americas into China. The export to China has some export opportunities in higher value foods, whether it's in some processed meats, for example, in some specific areas like GMO-free soybeans, and the value-added foods. But still, in the overall scheme of things, it's a small percentage of our portfolio.
Just looking ahead, because you're already looking at China 2020, presumably we're going to see huge demand for food within China and the emerging Asian markets, India.
Yes.
So how is Cargill going to be tackling this, getting involved?
If we look specifically at China, China's got about 20% of the population and 7% of the arable land. And they, because of the country, the economic development of the country up till the last decade, basically China was by far and large keeping things in a more self-sufficient manner. And once in a while, as I mentioned earlier, would import a bit of things, would be exporting grains, corn. At that one point, China was a big exporter of corn. And now as the economy is developing, there's stress in the system. If you're becoming richer and you have 20% of the population, 7% of the arable land, at one point things start giving, right? And oilseeds was the first thing that really went. China now accounts for over 40% of the global trade flow of soybeans, and palm oil close to that as well. So what we're trying to do, we tend, I think, at least at Cargill and probably several people over the last several years, when we project China, we tend to project that, you know, economic growth will continue but will slow down. There'll be some type of plateau at one point. And we continue to get that one wrong. If we just look at what happened with the economic crisis, China's posted, you know, GDP rates of roughly 10%. So we're bringing our group together to think, you know, and we're consulting with several economists, several business leaders as well. What could China look like in the next 10 years? We don't need to get it exactly right, and we'll never be able to do that. But we need to get it directionally right. And once we get our thinking around that and align the corporation, then we can put the resources behind it. And we want to make sure we don't miss it. Because if China continues on its economic success, by 2020 it's going to be a significant country. It already is a significant country, but for the food industry, it'll be beyond what we can imagine today. And we want to make sure we're positioned for that.
So it's a huge opportunity then in terms of that sort of interplay with trading, bringing foodstuffs into China.
Yeah, exactly. And the same thing on the mineral side. You know, we're not sure what's going to happen there again, but as the economy continues, most likely to grow, that's what our belief is. It won't be a perfect shaped growth, but there will be challenges along the way. But we at Cargill, we believe this is something that's is going to continue. So when you look at their needs for iron ore, the needs for coal, there's a lot of potential significant impact there. Already has been, and we're just trying to imagine what could it be. You know, so this is the discussion we're having around this 2020.
Presumably doing this every 5 years, right? Because you've had the 2010 plan, now you've got the strategic intent for 2015. And,
Correct.
And at the basis of that is that you're now trying to get the business units to be more interconnected.
Yes.
So it's also going to impact your business in China?
Yeah, you know, normally we'd say, you know, we'd look at 5 years ahead. You know, our maybe a little bit more. Our 2015, our strategic intent 2 came out. Was taking like a 7 or 8 year outlook. And now we're taking a bit longer term outlook for China because we're trying to just elevate the discussion and take a much more broader view. And again, it's very different than strategic intent. Strategic intent is about it's about the culture of the company. It's a high level thought of that gives direction to the corporation. The China one, although we want to be high level about China, we want to be very specific about, you know, what we need to succeed in China. And today the global model of Cargill is very business unit led. Some are based in China, some are global. We want to relook at that to see what is the best way to address the China opportunity.
The only business unit you haven't got there is biofuels, right? Is that because it's mainly for the West?
China's very concerned about food security. A few years ago, when China was a significant exporter of corn, as I mentioned, was the second largest exporter of corn in the world. So going to biofuels and using ethanol seemed like a logical, you know, step. But very quickly, with the growth, the economic growth and the change of diet, suddenly the corn surplus did not disappear, but the corn supply and demand quickly came into balance. Now going forward, China's going to need, as a tremendous challenge, to increase their yields on corn, only to keep up really for food demand. So biofuels from corn does not make sense, and China does not have a surplus of other vegetable oils. So for China, biofuels is not the answer, and so we haven't looked at biofuels for China because we don't think strategically it makes sense for the country, and we also know that the Chinese government has dropped their ideas about biofuels and is discouraging the industry of growing in China.
You've been working quite closely with farmers over the past 3-4 decades. And from time to time you see government regulations shifting. To what extent is your job then effectively having to handle the government relations?
With regards to farmers in China, this is a very big challenge. China has 700 million people living in rural areas. Many of them are farmers. Most of Chinese farmers are small, and in general this is not the best model to have a modern, high efficient agriculture, but that's a lot of people, and there's some China's exploring with some agricultural reform, land reforms, but we think it's going to be a very slow process. What do you do if you go suddenly in a very short period of time to large farms owned by a few farmers? What do you do with all these other farmers? So there's a big social issue here that China needs to manage. So what we try to do, we don't, in terms of the policy of things, we don't see this as our role. We're there more to respond to the needs of the country, so we are very involved in working with farmers in China, grain farmers and livestock farmers, because China also has, again, it's in the millions of small livestock farmers. So we deploy significant resources in working and educating farmers. One thing that we've done, which we're quite proud of, and we think it's quite unique I'd say China, but I'd extend that to the global. Our animal nutrition business has trained over 2.5 million farmers in better livestock practices in China alone.
And in terms of working with the government, how does Cargill normally work with the government?
We'll be very engaged and have very open and frank dialogue. We do want trust to be instilled between us and different government bodies. And I think specifically in China, I think we're seeing some very positive things develop. We're very fair, and we want to have a balanced approach. Of course, we have our own interests, but we also look at the long term. And whenever we work with government, we try to bring our thoughts of what is best for the industry and what's best for the long run in the end for the consumers.
Robert Aspel, President of Cargill China, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.